our show, our YouTube podcast shouldn't be political. The problem is, like you said, that our healthcare system has been so ingrained with politics that it's hard to have these conversations without bringing politics in. So that's probably what we're going to touch so much today on policy and RFK and these government agencies as we go through these topics today.
It's fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of then, we can't not talk about what happened. It happened a little while ago, but it's a big deal with the measles outbreak, right?
Yep.
And we've heard that, and again, it's going to touch on politics, like you said, but like we've got to talk about what happened. Should we be concerned about it? Is there what's going on?
I feel like that was coming. Like, I mean, when we think about the measles outbreaks, I feel like every single year there's an outbreak, but there's been a lot of attention to this one in particular. I hope it doesn't have to do with politics, but I do feel like there's a political aspect to it, especially since RFK has been appointed as secretary about a month and a half ago at this point. But if we look at measles outbreaks, they're cyclical. Almost every year there's about 100, 200 cases. Most of the time they're non-lethal. So some of these kids will have a rash, they'll have a fever, they'll be better in no time, and the measles is gone. And then it's completely normal, these cyclical things. The problem right now is the problem is the death of the kid that just recently happened, which, by the way, I saw do you guys see the video of the interview with the parents?
I didn't. No.
Yeah, so there's an interview with the parents, and the kid, I think it was a girl, I believe. The girl died from pneumonia that was secondary to measles. However, when they had 4 kids, the 4 kids got the measles. The first 3 recuperated super quickly, but the other one, it just lagged and lagged. So they took him to the ER, and I believe the doctor said, just go home, gave him Tylenol, and they'll be fine. And they just kept getting worse. And I think there has to be some sort of malpractice around this case, though. Because I don't think that little girl received the emergency care that they needed in that moment. And I think the media has played a huge role pointing out that they were unvaccinated, that they were from I believe the Mennonite community. I'm pretty sure when I was looking at the interview. And, now they're putting all the blame into the unvaxxers. And obviously it's just, now it's become from a regular outbreak to propaganda. And now they're pushing for the vaccinations. They're saying they're shipping all these vaccines down to Texas so we can get a vaccination campaign going again. So I don't know. It's a little bit, it's scary for a parent though.
So just to confirm, can you be vaccinated against measles and get measles?
Yes. Well, certain cases. You shouldn't if the vaccine works, but some people might contract measles even with the vaccine.
But you're saying that the little girl in this case, actually the cause of death on the death certificate is most likely not measles.
No, it was pneumonia secondary to measles, and that happened after.
So therefore it would kind of seem as though there was a compromise in the immune system overall.
Yes, exactly. That's what it's looking at. And based on the interview of the parents, I don't think the kid received the care that she needed.
Interesting. And I want to touch base real quick for people who are listening that might not know this. Can we talk about what does it mean to be immune compromised? Why do some people handle measles fine and some don't? Why would some people handle the flu fine and some don't? Can any of you share your thoughts?
I mean, immunocompromised. So there's 2 ways you can look at immunocompromised. It could be the people that are struggling with cancer. They're going through some sort of treatment, which their defenses are down because the actual treatment is killing the host, essentially. And then there's immunocompromised people that are really not healthy people, but they're not sick, but their immune system doesn't function well.
But they may not even know.
They might not even know it. These are the people that are not sleeping well. They're malnutritioned. They're taking a lot of medication, so their body's not healthy, but it's not sick. They just don't know it. That's really what an immunocompromised person is. So there's a lot of immunocompromised people right now.
Interesting. You guys probably see them all the time coming into your office, right? Can you tell oftentimes when you're adjusting somebody if somebody is immunocompromised? Like, that's a random question. But
No, I mean, what we could see in a lot of patients is they're under a lot of stress, and usually we know that at some point the sickness is going to hit.
Sure. also just knowing a good history on that patient, over time, getting to know them and how quickly they get sick, how quick they fight those, typical illness, a cold or a flu, lets you know who's going to be more easily susceptible to certain things over another person. But just looking at them, not necessarily. But then you have patients like your HIV patients and stuff, there's immunocompromised.
So what's fascinating when it comes to vaccines is vaccines do, whether they help or not, which we can argue that all day long, both sides, but whether they help or not, there is going to be a certain level of toxicity that come with them, correct?
Absolutely. There's a lot of ingredients in a lot of them. And while they've done a better job of getting rid of like thimerosal and heavy metals in a lot of them, there's still certain vaccines that do contain heavy metals. And I believe the flu vaccine, it's one of the few that still has either lead or thimerosal in them. And you can request, if you're a fan of vaccines, you can request a dose that doesn't have those ingredients though.
That's super important for people who don't understand and realize
Yep.
and talk to their doctor about. So interestingly enough, then, if you're going to get vaccinated, if you do have a lower immune system, right, that could push something over the edge for you.
Yes, because you're also got to look at immunity, and you also have to look at toxicity in general. Okay. So, for example, there's something called bioaccumulation, which we talked a lot before. But when you look at a kid or you're looking at an adult, you got to look at all the cumulative stressors that the body's under. Not only the vaccination and the toxicity that comes from it, but you got to look at what type of food are they eating. Are they close to a field that they're throwing herbicides in it and the body's absorbing all those toxins? Or you got to look at how much trauma the body's been through over time. All these things keep accumulating, and then you put a vaccine in them, and this could be the last thing that messes their immune system up. Unfortunately.
So let me ask you guys this, is obviously we've talked before how, and this general stance is if you want to do vaccines, do vaccines. That's a personal choice. You guys have talked about this.
Absolutely.
What are some things that you guys might recommend if you are somebody who decides to go ahead and vaccinate? How can you make your body stronger before and after you do decide to get a vaccine?
Which, by the way, if you vaccinate or not, like you said, it's a personal decision, but there's repercussions with both choices. If you do not choose to vaccinate, you got to make decisions that are going to get you stronger and healthier. And if you choose to vaccinate, it doesn't mean you can live a reckless life doing whatever you want with your body. So, for example, if a kid is vaccinated, and let's assume they're vaccinated against measles, mumps, rubella, it doesn't mean they can live an unhealthy life and just eat whatever they want and put anything in their body that they want. They're still, if they contract the measles, which they still can, even with the vaccine, if they want to have a better outcome, they have to be, you got to eat healthy, whole food, same thing. We got to get them sleeping better. A lot of these kids, they don't sleep. They're plugged into an iPad. So their immune system and their body never has a chance to recover. And then on top of that, they have high levels of sugar in their bloodstream from all the crap that they're eating. So that's a lot of toxicity in the body. So just because you choose to vaccinate, it's not a green card so you can actually live a reckless life and do whatever you want.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I like to sit down and have that conversation because each individual is different, whether it's their body, their medical history, or their own desire to vaccinate or not. And if they are in the camp where they decide that that's what they want to do, I do try to give them supplements and things that they can take to boost that immune system so that at least they're in the best shape possible to then get vaccinated and do what they want in terms of making sure they're protected in the way they want. So I do like when we hear these things on the news because it prompts people to, start paying attention and then start making those decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and what you were talking about oftentimes, and I've heard you use this analogy before, but I'd love it if you shared it again, is like our bodies are kind of like a cup, right? Can you kind of share that analogy with us?
So we talked about bioaccumulation. That's one part that people have to understand. And when it comes to vaccination, that's a very important concept for every single parent and for researchers in general. Like, it's not the vaccine that can become the tipping point of a body having a bad response. It's all the cumulative effects. The other part is we cannot focus so much on the thing outside of the body, but rather we got to focus our energy on the host, making sure that your body's stronger, it's healthier, it's more resilient. And I think the conversation when it comes to vaccinations and measles, it has to shift from the actual measles to the actual host. I think when we start to transition the conversation, that's when we're going to start to have better health outcomes.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when we look at measles, and you can look at this in the CDC, if a kid is malnutrition, the chances of them having adverse reactions or adverse outcomes from measles, it's extremely high. They're eating crap. But a very strong kid that's eating healthy, it's very healthy, it's very hard for measles kid to kill that kid, you know, from a biological perspective. So we got to focus more on the host, on the kid per se.
I had a friend who used to say you have to make yourself inhospitable, and they talked a lot about so they studied a lot. My friend, who's a nurse practitioner and stuff, they studied a lot about Lyme disease, right, which is a parasite basically, right? And she was saying like so many people are affected by Lyme disease and parasites in general, but then some people aren't. Well, why not? It's the same thing, just like you're saying, measles is the same thing. Some affects, some don't. Why do they pick some people and don't? It's exactly what
it's the host. At the end of the conversation, it's the host. But again, we got to go back, regardless if you choose to vaccinate or not, for measles, you still got to, as a parent, and again, I'm not a dad, right? But that's the goal with the future. It's my responsibility to make sure that my kid is the strongest kid possible, that they're the healthiest they can be with the choices that I'm making for them. That's extremely important for me. You know, from a political perspective, you have government agencies that they still have to be, they got to do the research on these vaccines and the toxicity. For example, Japan gives you the option to actually not take the MMR vaccine, but rather take the measles vaccine and then the mumps vaccine and then the rubella vaccine. So they actually split them up, because unfortunately the MMR vaccine is one of the most controversial shots in the United States. And again, whether the research points that they do cause certain things or they don't cause certain things, it's hard to debate a mom that saw their kid being a perfectly healthy baby and suddenly they get a triple shot and a week later the kid stops talking and goes to nonverbal. I don't care about the research. You know, at the end of the day, that's the experience from the mom.
I was reading the other day something about vaccines, and you guys were doing the research. And Japan is one of the country. It is the country with the lowest mortality rate when it comes to children's death. So they must be doing something right as well.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's very interesting because you can ask to have a different schedule, for vaccines. Yep. You can slow it down. Like, I think I read somewhere, maybe you know this, Dr. Anders, is like how many vaccines when we were kids did we have compared to in our first 2 years of life?
Now it's over 60 shots right now.
Oh, in your first year or two.
Yeah, which is insane.
It's very low.
You would have thought, you know, being a developed nation which has great hygiene, that our vaccine schedules would be a lot less compared to other countries that don't have the same technology, same science, research, hygiene, compared to us. However, we're probably one of the countries with the biggest and largest vaccine schedule out of any other country in the world. That is not good. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these bacteria and viruses, most of them, they don't exist anymore.
Yeah. And talk to me real quick. I don't think we ever got back to it. Is like if you think of your body as a glass of water, and vaccines have some toxins, that food has toxins in it, our environment has toxins in it. What happens to our body then? Yeah,
over time, that the toxicity level is so much that your body cannot detox it, get rid of it. So your body's going to start to create compensation mechanisms. That's where we start to see cancer or autoimmune conditions. Now your body cannot pump that out, unfortunately. And unfortunately, most of us in general don't know how to detox with the body, right? You know, unfortunately. And we just keep putting toxicity into that cup.
We never empty the cup at all.
We never empty the cup, unfortunately.
So how can we empty, what are some of you guys, all of you all can answer this, is like, what do you do to stay healthy? What do you do to detox your body? What do you do to get rid of those toxins that maybe you chose to have, maybe you didn't choose to have? Maybe it's because we live in Florida and there's environmental stuff all over the place. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, do you have any protocols for detoxing?
I mean, it just depends on what you're detoxing.
Just general health.
Detoxing is going to be lifestyle and health changes, diet changes overall, getting rid of removing from the diet sugars, preservatives, and things like that. But then you also need to detox out your different organs that are now holding those chemicals in that you've had over a lifetime, over that span of time, and get those clean. So that's where I would generally have a protocol.
Cleanses are good. Fasting is phenomenal as well. Just water fast.
What about sweating? We live in Florida.
Saunas are great too for detoxing.
The easiest for us.
I mean, you can get good detox like kits from different companies like Dr. Pampas. Dr. Pampa is a chiropractor, but practices mostly functional medicine. He has a great detox program as well. And you just buy the kit. I don't know how, I think it's a week or two, something like that. And it does a great job at taking those toxins out of the body and pretty much getting rid of them.
Does chiropractic help you, like, not that it makes you detox, but does it open detox pathways?
I mean, when we look at the lymphatic system, absolutely. It's super connected to the immune system and the thymic tissue. And you can work on different parts of the spine to get the nervous system to talk better to the thymic tissue and to the lymphatic system, so you can drain a lot of that stuff out. Yeah, usually when, for example, with somebody sick, we want them to detox and get the lymph system, the lymph nodes and the thymic tissue working better. I usually want to work on the upper thoracic area.
Okay.
That's an area that's extremely connected to the thymic tissue of your body.
Interesting.
I've seen you very sick. It's not, I mean, you do all these things, and I've seen you very sick while dating you. And I remember, I thought, you get a fever.
It was stress from dealing with
in
you.
Puerto Rico. Let's just put some Valparaiso.
Vicks.
That's how you cure everything, everyone. By the way, stop listening to these two. But then I remember you like stay out, and then you wrap in like 3 blankets, and I'm like, I need
like
to
hell.
sweat this fever, and then that's what. And then I was like, this dude is nuts. But then the next day you'll be like, let's go, we're good.
Whenever I get sick, I just I'm waiting for that fever. I was like, come on, let's
Where
go.
most people try to repress.
Yes, that's the thing. So you see, I'm like, what can I take so this, like, my
Goes down,
temperature goes down? But then you just
I try to
like,
push
let's
my body
ride
to the
it.
limit until I get the fever. Once I get it, I try to wrap myself until I sweat it as much as I can. And usually your body responds very quickly. But again, we've been taught the opposite. We've been told that fever is not good. It feels bad. Take a Tylenol or ibuprofen, whatever it does. Suppress it. And then you're going to deal with the fever for like 7 days because you don't let your body heal itself.
I had a nurse tell me that unless it goes above, and this is not advice. This is just what somebody told me. They said it was something like until your fever gets to be like 102 or something, like let it run so that your body is detoxing. But then you want to be careful once it gets higher to make sure that you don't get
neurological damage or seizure. And I think kids, it's even higher than that.
I think
I would say 102, 104. I mean, ideally, it's your body's natural defense to kill off any bacteria or microbes. But at the same time, when you get to elevated temperatures, it denatures the enzymes your body uses for natural processes, and that's where it gets problematic.
Yep.
Gotcha.
To keep track of it. Going back to the vaccines, we're talking about a different schedule. There's a great book that I was reading. It's called the Vaccine Friendly Plan by Dr. Paul Thomas. He actually goes each chapter, he goes over one different vaccine and whether you should or should not consider it. He talks about the vitamin K shot. He talks about MMR. He talks about hepatitis shots. And it's great for parents that are trying to figure out, do I want to vaccinate? Do I not want to vaccinate? Do I want a different plan? But it gives you the information so you can make an informed decisions, because at the end of the day, whether you choose to vaccinate or not, the decision has to come from knowledge, not from fear or ignorance.
Exactly.
Well, and really, I'm pretty sure all 50 states have some policy that requires
Exemption.
kids
to
get vaccinated.
Yeah, they do.
If they're entering into at least a public schools or
There's exemptions,
into and it has to be an exemption. It's not just a choice.
It's not like you want it and that's it.
You
Yeah.
don't have the natural choice. You actually have to go through some loopholes in order to get that exemption. But most kids are getting it. And I think you get two shots, one early on and then one by like 6
For the MMR?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you're
It's
good
2
for
shots.
life, or that's the idea, although there's very little testing to account for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is you have to be willing to, like you said, research and actually go against the grain a little bit. And Genesis, you might be able to speak to this a little bit.
It's a tough
it
conversation.
can be hard to do that, but what can you, like, what would you say to somebody who's considering just looking into something and thinking maybe I can do something different. I know you've had people shame you for things you've done or said or whatever. Like, how can you encourage people to, like, it's okay to be different, it's okay to look, it's okay to research, it's okay to make different decisions than you're being told you have to?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had conversations in the past few weeks with my best friend. Just had a baby about a month and a half ago. She lives in Wesley Chapel. We know each other from our whole life in Puerto Rico, and we all got, at least me and her, we were talking all the vaccines back then, and knock on wood, we're healthy. But I mean, her baby was just born, and she was just telling me the story. I was just listening, because with those topics too, you know, people can be very sensitive. You don't know where they're coming from. So I try to be.
We shouldn't be.
I think should be the opposite. We should be more willing to talk about it. But one of the things that they were telling me is that right when their baby boy was born, or right before, like hours when they were discussing what they were going to do, the doctor said, asked them, do you want to do the hepatitis B shot? And both of them together with the doctor said, we're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. The third time, they ended up doing a C-section. Mom is recovering. And then with the dad, they take the baby, and with the dad, they asked that without mom. And then that's when my friend's husband, it's our friend too, got like very defensive. It's like, my wife and I, we said no. And then they kind of basically made it feel like, I'm sorry, my dog, distracting me, going back. I just, that scenario that she was describing to me, or they were telling me, that I find that very disrespectful, especially wife not being there. We already made a decision. Like, I get that you're the nurse and you're the doctor, but like, who are you to bring this question again and trying to shame you for the decisions that you as parents, I'm sure already did your research to like say no in the first place. So I was just listening, and I was like, for me, I was like, that's crazy. I cannot even imagine if I was in you guys' position, I would have flipped or say something else. But at the end of the day, going back to, it's a personal decision. Yeah, I cannot, good if you want to do it or not, but we should not be shaming others for, we can all listen and have a conversation, but that's the line.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation, right? You have a baby. It's the most precious thing you ever create in your life. And you're battling these questions like, should I do this? Should I? And
they make you feel wrong for choosing.
Yeah, it's tough. So, if I was a dad and I was about to have a kid, I'm asking myself, let's say I was in this moment in time with the measles outbreak. I got to look, first of all, what is measles, to understand what it is. What symptoms will my kid experience if they contracted this thing? Once I figure out what would the symptoms look like, how severe can they get, and what's the worst case scenario, and then based on the worst case scenario, what type of treatments can this baby get in case that we ended up in the worst case scenario? What's the mortality rate? How often does this happen? That's the other question. It's like, is this a 1 in 10 kids, or is this 1 in a million? And then once I get all that information, I ask the other question, is like, if I choose not to vaccinate, what's the worst case scenario? Mm-hmm. What are the symptoms going to look like? And if I choose to vaccinate, what's the worst case scenario? What are the symptoms or the side effects that my kid can get from vaccinating? How often does this happen? What's the chances? 1 in 100, 1 in 200? And then you weight them out, and you're like, all right, based on the data that I have, it makes more sense not to vaccinate, because the chances of my kid getting injured by a vaccines are way higher than him contracting measles in Florida, where, again, it's a very healthy environment. So as a parent, you got to ask these tough questions so you can actually make informed decisions. And, you got to read a lot of books. And there's great books. I have 2 right here. The one I just mentioned, The Vaccine Friendly Plan. The other book that's very good, it's How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. These are medical doctors that created these books. And as a mom, you read them, or as a dad, and it gives you a lot of feedback where you actually can make a choice and feel good about the choice you just made regardless of what people say about it.